Okay, now we just gotta wait and see if anybody decides to show up. I'm going to post your channel right here in the chat.
Oh, cool. Thank you. And
But
right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to log into your channel so I can
yeah,
actually try to see chat on the other phone.
yeah, I know. I hate how StreamYard does it
Yeah.
because, like, I notice that I get like a really bad lag between what's in chat and what pops up here, and then by
Yeah.
the time I see it, people have already like left because they didn't get answered.
Now
I'm
see
like,
it's the opposite for me. When I'm on, like I'm in StreamYard with you right now, and I click comments on the right and I can see the comments immediately, but I've got to get so close to read them. But on YouTube, there's like that 3 to 5 second delay sometimes.
yeah, mine's just totally the opposite.
Is it?
I don't know. It's weird. But I mean, I also haven't got the paid version of StreamYard either, so I don't know if maybe that's got something to do with it or not.
No, because I use everything free.
Yeah, me too. Free's always best, or at least best for my wallet anyway.
Your link comes up for me as being like on a web page, so I'm going to go through the app. What's your channel?
Never silent.
Okay. That's why the other night when we did that one, we didn't really get in as much as I wanted to do with people doing stuff on channels, but it's easier than people think to do things just using phones. Like that video I made, I don't know if you saw that on the mirror. I
Yeah,
did that using my camera app on the phone with no editing software, just using the pause button and no microphone or anything. And it was crystal clear, video and audio, and no gaps between the pause marks. I mean, if I wanted to add stuff to it, I'd need to use software, but I did that whole thing with just my phone.
you're very, very talented.
Nah, that's just me. The thing is having a good, and it's not even real. I've got a big water jug with my phone clip from the car, holding the phone clip to the handle of the water jug, holding the phone.
That really sounds like something I would do.
It
But
works,
no, yeah, like even on the StreamYard, I've seen where you can like record and then later upload like what you record, and you can like
Yeah.
um, add video and then voiceover and all. Yeah, I'm not talented. I can't figure any of that out.
I'm trying to find your channel on YouTube, and it's not. There's so many never silenced.
Oh, you might need to look up "Peace Not Silenced."
Is your avatar like a griffin with a rainbow background?
Yeah.
Okay, that is a griffin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, trying to tell. Just so you know, my eye started moving today, which would sound like a good thing, but it's actually making it even harder to see. But I think I'm hurting it by wearing the patch all the time. So I'm keeping the patch off, but with it off, it's real hard to see stuff. So I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
Patch
I've
off,
had some.
with it off, it's real hard to see stuff. So there we go. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I've had some clients that have had the eye patches and stuff that they had to wear, and they always complained about them and having harder time seeing after they were off.
Yeah. Now I found your channel on my other phone, and I'm in YouTube, and the lag has got to be like 15 seconds.
Yeah, same. I see somebody else come in. Maybe I don't know. I hate that we can't really see like who's in here unless they chat.
Yeah, I wish the app worked better, but it shows 3 people in chat, and I liked it, and then went back to live chat. So
Yeah, say because I know I've got my phone in here too, but
yeah,
anyway, the whole fentanyl crisis, like
yes,
I have totally like messed with my brain looking at all this research and stuff up. it goes in so many different directions.
Yeah.
But
But I've done some research on the cartel end, and the best I've come up with so far is the reason that there's so much fentanyl, especially mixed in with the heroin, is because the stuff was being cut too much when it came to the U.S. So now they're actually cutting stuff now with fentanyl before it comes into the U.S. It's a cartel thing to meet the demand. People want the supply being stronger, so that's what they're doing. And at this point, the cartel's been divided up so much that they don't actually get their hands dirty. They give permission to different groups in the different cities to do the drugs, to do the smuggling and getting over the border and all that. So they're just being paid to allow things to happen. So they don't really care about the end product anymore.
I mean, I guess as long as they get their money, that's pretty much all they would care about. I had looked into that, and they said that the Sinaloa cartel is one of the main distributors for all of it. It kind of
Yes.
makes me wonder if they went more that way after like all the shit with El Chapo and stuff. Hey,
Sort
Leslie.
of. After the El Chapo stuff, that's what I meant. They divided up how it works. It used to be the way the cartel ran is they did everything. They handled the growing, the picking, the labs that manufactured the drugs, the packing, the distribution, uh, sending it into the U.S. and all that. And after that El Chapo stuff, they decided to go a different route. Now they run everything more like the Italian mob. They just allow people to do things, and anything that people want to do, they get a cut of. And you know, they allow the protection because in these cartel run cities, the police answer down there, there's a difference between the police and the military. And the police can be dirty, they can allow things to happen. If they try not to be dirty, they wind up becoming victims.
Yeah, I
And
was
then
going to say, if
the
they're not dirty,
military,
they don't usually make it very far, especially on the border towns.
yeah, yeah. So it's an odd mix up there, but I think what's hurt us on this end with having so much bad drugs and lace drugs is because I think the number was like 60% of what they were making before was off of marijuana. And now that that's becoming legal in a lot of places, that's hurt their income substantially. So, like I've seen other people do podcasts on this, on the marijuana downtimes, the sellers in the US would then switch over to coke or whatever drug was an easy sell. And that would fill in the areas where there was droughts and hard to get product over until they started growing on the West Coast a lot. But now that they've taken that part out, they've gone into the legal part in the US with growers. But since they can't use banks for these dispensaries, the money's stuck. There's no way for them to do anything with the money. So I read an article the other day that said that in Colorado, the Justice Department for the bank, the Fed, the Federal Reserve stepped in because these dispensers are holding so much cash, they're just ripe to get robbed. So there's supposedly some agreement that's being worked out in Colorado to where they can actually have the money held and not be prosecuted for having drug money because it's still federally an offense. Even though the state makes it legal, the feds have not legalized it. So they're trying to create a loophole to where they'll do that. Well, by doing that, now that gives the cartel a place to step in, own some of these dispensaries in these U.S. groweries, and actually have the federal government launder their own money. It's kind of a slippery slope, but in order to make up until that comes into play, they've been pushing the fentanyl cut drugs heavier because they need their income to come back.
Yeah, I mean, that totally does make sense. I mean, in a bad way, obviously, but
yeah, but it fits things. And I mean, when Obama was president, he's the one that was trying to make it to where banks would be able to process money for the dispensaries, even though it was federally illegal to do that. And they never did come together with a program that worked properly. but the government's still working on that to make it. And I said, I read that article. It wasn't really a complete article. It didn't give the end results, but if that's happening now, then that means the government's actually laundering this drug money for these growers and these dispensaries, which are now cartel owned in the U.S.
Yeah. Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah.
Hey, Chaotic, how are you?
Hey guys, how are you doing in chat?
Yeah, and then another way that I was looking at it, and I didn't save any of this information. My cat kind of locked me out of everything. But I had seen an article where one woman actually didn't have any charges or anything put against her for using fentanyl, and she had basically started supplying her whole town with fentanyl patches, used fentanyl patches. And they were taking the gel and stuff out of them, and she was putting them in little bottles and calling it a diet aid.
Wow.
And
that's
literally nothing happened to her. Like, she got off scot-free with it.
It's definitely a scary situation, the way the FDA is going to work things with that too. But, like we were talking the other night, I still think there's a correlation between the suppliers of this fentanyl-laced drugs and human trafficking, because I watch the Facebook groups for people that talk about being followed at Walmarts. It'd be young single mothers, mothers with kids, younger women, and it's like they've got these teams now that use two-way radios when they're in the store, so they don't have to actually follow the people out anymore. They track them in the store, they give the locations, and then there's somebody outside with a radio that knows when they're leaving. And it just seems coincidental that this happens in a lot of these towns that have a lot of problems with meth and heroin and fentanyl-laced drugs. So I almost wonder if the teams that are delivering the large quantities to the dealers are using it as a return trip to bring people back being trafficked across the border. I've always wondered if there's a connection there.
There has to be. I mean, I kind of started looking into a little bit of that because I already have a little bit on here about the human trafficking and stuff. And then we had that bust right across from where I work. And everything that you can look up in the newspapers and stuff, they talk about the drugs. They talk about the $40,000 from the processed marijuana. They talk about the money stash. They talk about everything, but they have yet to mention anything about the human trafficking aspect of it. And the marijuana that was processed did have fentanyl in it.
Yeah. Well, when they're smuggling the stuff across, they pack it together. I was listening to a thing the other day, and what they said is because the cartels are not really the ones trafficking the stuff over the border anymore. It's groups that have permission from them, that you'll get these money people in these cities in Mexico, and 3 or 4 of these buyers will wind up buying smaller amounts of what they want to get over the border. That way, if they do get busted, they're not losing their full amount, and they'll do it in like 3 or 4 different transactions. So what they're doing is, one person does a lot of stuff with fentanyl and heroin, and you got another guy that does a lot of marijuana, and they'll group these things together in like these submersible subs or whatever they've got going across the border for the trip. So a lot of the drugs now get contaminated from each other. So you might have somebody that's doing stuff that's not normally laced, and now there's trace amounts on it because it was smuggled together in bags stuffed in these, unmanned subs that they send with radio control across the water.
Damn, that's messed up. I hadn't got my research into the transportation and stuff of, this part of it. I haven't done any research or put out any videos on that, but that is one thing that I was actually wondering. Like, I mean, I know that they have people walking across the border and stuff like that, obviously with some of it, but there has to be ways that they're doing it to where they get more.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's still so many tunnels that they've got that have been there for years, going underneath the border in different areas. And then you've got the water routes where they go to different harbors, and they can come up around on the West Coast and then come up above California. And there's so many areas that are just not patrolled on the border there. Everyone talks about the border and they think of land borders, but You've got all the coastline that's a border too, and a lot of that is open, easy to get to.
Yep, and a lot of the tunnels and stuff that El Chapo had built for his escape and stuff, they're still up
Yeah.
and running. And one
Yeah.
of them literally goes straight into the jail. They
Yeah.
haven't sealed it. They haven't done anything to it.
I mean, there's so many ways to do things too. Like you could go and get a piece of property somewhere on the West Coast and open up a legit business that imports products that you need for your business. Let's say, like olives or avocados or stuff like that. And then you're a legit business person on the paperwork for that business, but yet you've got somebody funding you. And then you've got somebody on the other side that has a business doing the same product but exporting it. And of course, the exportation, they're not going to be able to check every container and every box and every crate. And you can contain the drugs in that shipment, send it out there. And if you're the guy in the US that owns that business, you're like, I have no idea. All I do is import orders for these businesses. And it sort of gives them an easier edge on being charged by the government.
Yeah, and anybody that has a ranch, drop your links and stuff too. Or anybody else that's in here that has a channel, you can drop it for them. But yeah, I was gonna say I had seen some stuff coming out of I want to say like Vermont. There was like a big I don't even know what it was. It was some kind of a plant, like an electric plant or maybe gas or something like that. But they had like 100,000 shipping containers that had been going back and forth through their site. And when they did the total at the customs, that only like 20,000 had been checked.
Yeah, so it would be impossible to check every container. If you're a legit person with a legit business and you do, 6 months or a year of normal business so that you get off of anyone's radar as being new, and then you start funneling stuff through, were they going to check 1 or 2% of the stuff coming in the United States? Yeah. And then, who knows what else once it gets here. There's so many private planes with small airports to ship it from one state to another.
Yeah, we have one here.
Yeah. Oh, there's several in Indiana, all within these, small towns.
Yeah, and I was, after we had talked the other day, which is probably going to leave a few people kind of in the dark because we had the conversation. But after we had talked the other day, one of the pilots is at this one over here. He come into the store and I was talking to him and just asking him about how he can land and, the communication that he has between the towers and stuff like that. And he said he can literally fly across country and only legally has to talk to 3 different towers from one side to the other. It's like mandatory, like 3 towers. Other than that, he's just doing his own thing. So, I mean, there's a lot of not important.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it in like the music industry. So many artists have their own private jets. And it's been known that so many people in that business use.
And the yachts.
Yeah. They're getting it somewhere. I mean, how many people are using their private jets in exchange for drugs for themselves or, money to get drugs in and out? It's just they're not running up and down the highway anymore. It's definitely going different routes.
I was going to say there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of different ways to do.
Yeah.
Alexa, I'm going to drop a link here in the chat. If you want to take it and come up here with us, you can, because I know you got some information and stuff on this too.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, we'll just put the live off on Alexa. Like we'll let her. we'll just let her do her thing. But yeah, there's a lot. I had seen too in some of the research, not exactly with the transporting. It was more for the human trafficking aspect, not actually the drug aspect. But like before, they used to have it to where like the Coast Guard could just like go out and board and search or whatever. And now they have so many laws that prevent them from actually doing their jobs now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's national or international waters. Like there's very few laws that actually
Sure.
help them when they're out in open water.
And that's why you can run these different casino boats out in the water, because everything changes once you're off ground.
Hmm. And the punishment level for it changes drastically as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many different levels of punishment for the crime.
Yeah.
And you would think it's the same crime being committed, whether it's land, air, or water.
Yeah.
But people flying things get less punishment than land.
Yeah.
And water, they very seldom even go all the way through the court system.
Yeah. Yeah. You see a lot of these things that they mention as being airborne, because if you're committing the crime while you're in the air, technically, what jurisdiction are you in? It's hard to put a classification on airspace.
Yeah, it really is. And the same thing with the waters. And I've actually seen cases where one jurisdiction was trying to fight for, custody of everything that they had confiscated off of the water. And then another one would come in. And during the whole process, they literally just dismissed the case because everybody had messed with the evidence and lost this piece and that piece. And they have ways of not getting it prosecuted.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with why you don't see them cracking down as much on the top tier people involved, because it makes the case much harder to prove and to actually try.
Hey, Constance.
So there's deals that get cut, and it's like, well, we need the arrest. Let's go after what we can. That's why you see a lot of these large busts on the highway. And it's like, how did they know that that vehicle had to have drugs in it? And my theory is you've got people that are tipping in small guys just to get off on charges, or they're ratting just to make sure that they get ignored by the feds or the police. So they have to give somebody up. So they're giving up these small time traffickers. And to them, it's a big bust. But to the groups that are running the drugs through the United States, it's nothing. It's less than 0.1% of a daily transaction that gets lost just to keep the police off of them.
Yep, I was just about to say that what they get is nothing in comparison to what's really out there.
Because in Indiana, you'll see all the time, they'll say, okay, we pulled this person over on I-65 and we confiscated this much drugs or that much drugs. And it's like, how did they know to stop that vehicle and search that vehicle? The odds of picking that right big drug bust out of the blue on the highway, there's got to be more knowledge involved. There's no way it was just a cop sitting on the side of the road that says, I'm going to pull him over.
Yeah, there's always more to it. And it's just like, even when they did the bust here the other day, they confiscated like the processed marijuana that was laced and the money and stuff like that. But the next day, the whole group of people that they supposedly had arrested was back over at that shop watering the plants. They didn't even take what was planted.
That's crazy. That really is.
That right there tells me that these cops are in on it somehow. They're getting a kickback or something.
Yeah, or what you want to really hope is that it's part of a bigger investigation and they're not touching the stuff because they want to keep going deeper with what they've got going on. You can't rely on that as being the truth, but that's what you want to hope it is. That there's a bigger game plan and something good is going to come from it later on in the future.
Yeah, but from everything I have seen in this town, that was probably their biggest that they're going to get with it, because there's literally nothing about the human trafficking. And we seen it. Like we were standing outside watching it. We saw them release people that was being held there. Plus they went to like 13 different houses to release people.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I guess what it could be is your local police are making a bust, but really there's a larger federal investigation, and they're being told by the feds or whatever group it is that, look, we're this deep into this, we can't really mess up what we've got going on, so we're going to find a technicality to only prosecute for part of it. But like I said, that's hoping for the better outcome.
Yeah, and say that's a really big hope right there from around these parts. But I mean, yeah, I give them credit. I have seen some stuff that they have done, and they've, done it for the good of the people. But
Yeah,
most of the stuff that they do, it's like there's kickbacks and stuff for them. Like it's just how this works here, which is really sad.
things have changed so drastically. I mean, as you've watched crime progress over the last 40, 50, 60 years, they came down so hard on groups that committed crimes but had some sort of a code to follow that now it's been replaced with so many outside criminals that don't follow any code, and they don't care what happens in the long run to anybody that's buying a product from them or comes in contact with them and gets taken. It's a whole different outcome.
Yeah, and Constance is saying that it's bad in Kansas too,
Is it?
which I was kind of wondering how it was around, well, like in Oklahoma, but the bordering states.
Yeah,
Like, because it can't get better just across the border. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't work that way.
yeah. You got to wonder though. I think they'd want to go further out with the trafficking, because I think if they're doing that too close to the border, there's going to be more scrutiny. That's why I think you see a lot of these clusters more in the Midwest, and inside from the up north and west and south borders. I think you notice it more in the East Coast, West Coast, and then Middle America in the Midwest areas.
Yeah, 'cause I know around here we don't really have a lot of ice busts and stuff like that. I
Yeah,
mean, they'll like come in if they're called or whatever, but most of the time, and then they'll even tell them, like you have to hold them for like up to 48, 72 hours or something for us to get there. But then, like, if they're like a minute late, the jails just let people go.
yeah. And with trafficking, I'm sure it's a lot easier getting people out of the U.S. than it is getting back into the U.S.
Yeah, say it's going both ways, and uh, like we had been talking about, like with the military bases and
Yeah,
uh, the airports and Walmart and stuff like that. I am going to be digging deeper into that because it's just too many coincidences. Not that I believe in coincidences, but it's just too much of it adding up. There has to be something to it.
it's very odd that you notice that, because I noticed that too. You've got in a lot of the areas where you've got a lot of drug overdoses and fentanyl type deaths, you'll have Walmarts, you'll have military bases, you'll have small private airports, which I don't think people realize that because they're just looking for regular airports. But there's so many of these little towns that have private airports that really shouldn't. I mean, why do these towns in the middle of nowhere in farmland need 3 or 4 private airports within, like a 40, 50-mile range? How many people are actually flying private planes in farmland?
They're not. Supposedly, like the little tiny airport that we have here, which is some of the big wigs in our town that own it.
Yeah.
But when I was asking around after we had been talking, he said that, well, the one pilot said that in the whole time that he has had a plane there, which has been about 15 or so years, he said he has only had 3 jobs of flying people to a larger airport.
Yeah.
That most of the ones and stuff that come through, that it's just like vacation or him personal. It's not even really a job around here. It's just kind of there. It's literally just sitting there.
Yeah,
So
and
there,
like Gypsy Soul said in chat there, China has bought a lot of property in the United States, not just farmland, but it's amazing the different industries I've seen that China's buying up. They own a lot of city land, they own a lot of farmland, they own a lot of the companies actually they've been buying that produce, food in the United States, and that's not just farmland, but like livestock too. It's kind of scary when you look into it that an outside country that we're not really on the best terms with owns a good percentage of the most property in the United States by one single owner.
yeah, and the bust that happened here was with the Chinese.
Yeah, that's why I brought, because you'd mentioned that they were Asian, but I didn't know if they were Chinese or not there. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny how those things coincide with each other.
Mm-hmm. And where they did that bust, it's literally like maybe 4 blocks down from where the airport is.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. There's so much. Hey Sub Zero, I just seen you. Um, there is so much behind it. Like, it's crazy. When I started doing the research behind this, it has literally taken me days to do this. And even though I mentioned doing the live in the series, I had it mentioned a couple of lives back as
Yeah.
a possible series to cover. So I started doing the research back then, and
Yeah.
it has taken me in so many different directions.
It's like it's got legs. It grows in so many different areas. You can't follow all the offshoots.
That is very true too, Gypsy. That's that's actually one of the topics that I want to cover too, is about how they're adding all the stuff to the processed foods and stuff that we buy, because I've actually come across a ton of information for that as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's making people sick. It really
Yes.
is. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I've got celiac disease, and that's the most likely cause of people that have issues with gluten is the genetically modified, wheat that's grown in the United States.
yeah, honestly, there are seriously just a lot of stuff that they're putting into, and I mean, 90% of the stuff. The reason I haven't already done that series is because of the simple fact I can't pronounce half of the words that that come along with that series. So I'm gonna be like speaking and then spelling out a word and then continue speaking or something, because there's there's just no way I can pronounce all of it. Trying to go between English and then reading the English word with the Spanish pronunciation and then it being like Latin based or something. Yeah, it's hopeless for me. But yeah, and a lot of the places that have like the chicken farms and stuff like that, I've also noticed are some of the areas that have high drug rates.
Yeah. Yeah, like in India where I am, my building's real close. I'm actually across the street from one of the largest um, egg, egg plants, I would assume you call it, where the hatcheries are. And the meth problem in the general area around all that is through the roof. So that does correlate too. It seems to be when you've got livestock and you've got places that have, chickens and eggs, that they're really close to this. You've got Tyson's real close. They've got a lot of Tyson plants down there where they process chickens for food too.
Yeah, that's what Constance was saying here. Federal
Yeah.
investigators are looking into whether 50 children, some as young as 13, who are allegedly illegally employed cleaning Midwestern slaughterhouses were victims of labor trafficking. 3 officials from the Department of Homeland Security told NBC News Homeland Security investigations agents have interviewed children who worked cleaning a JBS food slaughterhouse in Grand Island.
Yeah. Well, in
And
Indiana, you've got Packers, which is that meat processing plant that's in Delphi, and they've got one of the highest employment rates for convicted, child predators. It's amazing the amount of people that work there that are on the list of people you want to avoid being near.
yeah, honestly, it's just, I don't know, it's everywhere. It's like nowhere is safe anymore. And a lot of these little towns where you grow up and like you want to sit back and say, oh, well, in my town, nothing like this ever happened. It's more like just what didn't you see?
Yeah.
It's not that it wasn't happening there, but I've come across a lot of people being like, oh, not in my town. And then even the cops, like when I tried to tell them about the human trafficking going on across the street from the store, oh, stuff like that don't happen in this town.
Yeah. That makes me wonder actually if there's something bigger going on by you, and they just don't want it let out in public yet. At least that you can hope for something like that, but you want to make sure the people in the meantime are not being treated in a way they shouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's like I can't even, go up there and ask for the court records or, anything that I could get just, as public that because there's nothing. They haven't done any reports or anything like that on the human trafficking aspect of it.
Yeah.
They talk about it amongst themselves, like sitting at the table at the store or whatever.
Yeah.
But they haven't made any documentation on it.
I definitely think there's a correlation between the lace drugs coming in and the human trafficking going out, though.
There is. I mean, I don't have proof or anything, but
no, but if you look at it and you follow the areas in the United States that have the higher numbers of both, they all seem to be in the same small areas.
They are.
Yeah.
And the areas just, I don't know. Whenever you hear something about a bust or, like a mass rate of death or something like that in an area based from drug abuse and stuff like that, after a couple of months, you just don't hear anything at all about those smaller towns. They try to push it off into the bigger cities. And it's the small towns that really have to worry about it.
Yeah. I was trying to look in chat, see if there's any questions that might jump in here.
Gypsy, I've worked home health and stuff, and my clients that had that, they have had numerous health problems since then. Yeah. I mean, I'm not like working home health right now, but I still kind of see my clients every now and then, and everyone that has received that has went downhill.
I agree with that too. I think there's some correlation between some of those conditions and the different things that were required to be inoculated with in the United States. The earlier protein-based injections that you would get, I don't think were as bad, but these ones that actually penetrate the cell and change things genetically, I think you're messing with something in somebody's body you really shouldn't be messing with.
Exactly. And I haven't went and got that. And I was still working home health when it was basically mandatory through a lot of places. Yeah. And my boss was like, nope. She's like, if you want to, go for it, but you're not going to be losing your job if you don't. But she had more in-depth paperwork on what it entails and stuff like that we just normally wouldn't receive. So there's no telling what she saw related to that.
What's funny is when they came out with these vaccines for the thing we went through, I don't want to mention the name because I don't want you to get a strike on here, but a few years ago when they came out the different inoculations, the only ones that were pushed were the ones that actually went in there and changed things with your cellular structure. The protein-based stuff that we've proven over time is nowhere near as bad on you, and it was the only one that they blocked for funding. So why would you block the only one that has a track record of not doing things to people's body without testing and forcing people to take shots that have not been proven with a track record of more than a year's worth of experience? 90-day push it on the people. It's all new, but for emergency situations, we're not going to have it, certified by the government to give to people health-wise. And I never understood that the only one blocked was the only one that actually didn't penetrate the cells and cause things down the road that might not be repairable.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not like pretty much anti anything, honestly. Yeah, I'm more pro-choice. Like, it's your choice, your body, you do it if you want. Yeah. But
it's not really anti-vax. It's we want it just like every other vaccination in history. We want a tested time frame, and understandable sometimes you can't do that. But if you've got one vaccination that's based on something that's tested and doesn't cause issues, and then you've got 2 or 3 new ones that we don't know any history on, why would you block the only one that we know is safe for people? That's the issue that I had with that.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I mean, it's like I've had clients that had it or got the shot for it and then eventually got it later. And some of them, their symptoms was easy, just
Yeah.
barely even there, like Sarah was saying. But some of the other ones, like after they had it and then they actually got the illness,
Yeah.
um, it ended up leading. One went on dialysis. Another one had like 15 strokes in like 3 months.
Yeah.
And her doctor straight up said that she shouldn't have got it. And when she did, he was kind of mad at her for it, I guess, from her way of telling me. And now she's all like, I wish I would have listened to my doctor and not got it.
Yeah.
But her neighbor didn't get it. And then she ended up getting the illness. And even without it, she barely had any, like a runny nose or sore throat or whatever. It wasn't nothing major. So I kind of think it's to the point you either get it and you get it or you don't and you don't. Like
Yeah.
it's going to affect you how it's going to affect you. And I don't think anybody's still really currently doing some studies on it. I think
No. I
pretty
don't.
much
I
the
don't think they're
government and
pushing
everything
that.
is just accepting. Yeah, they're just kind of accepting it as it is.
Well,
And
once they got emergency approval, there was no reason to do the testing because it's approved. So at that point, you put your time, your money, and your research into perfecting different versions of it, not doing the long-term testing for the long-term results later down the road.
yep. And leading back into the fentanyl thing, there was a study done, and once again, I don't remember exactly where I was at when I seen it because it was on a tab when my cat locked me out of everything. But
Darn
there,
cat.
yes, he's a pain in the ass. But there was a study done of people that had used the fentanyl and how it changes their brain mechanism, going into like people who wasn't having issues with like depression and stuff like that before,
Yeah.
that after they had received a dose like in a hospital under a doctor's care and stuff, that they ended up receiving or having a lot more health, mental and emotional, like anxiety, depression, and all other kinds of stuff started coming on with it. And from what I've seen, there hasn't even been a study on that. Like there was a study that like proved it, but
Right.
there hasn't been further studies to see, like basically what we can do about it.
Right. Yeah. Knowing the results, but not knowing what led to the results. Like, is it
Exactly.
inhibiting different emotions? Is it changing something in the pathways in the brain? Is it releasing different internal uh, drugs that your brain creates to cause different emotion receptors to respond or not respond? There could be so many different reasons for it, but
Hey,
looking
Grizz.
into that, yeah.
Grizz has made his presence known. But yeah, and then I had this pulled up to kind of go over a little bit. I know Alexa, um she actually saved someone from an overdose the other day. I
Yeah.
was kind of hoping she would be able to come on and tell her little story there about it, because she did a really good deed. But
It's so scary with how this drug reacts to people that don't use any drugs. It is such a different effect on them, to where instantly you start feeling it and then they're completely unable to do anything. And if there's nobody there to help them or to respond to the reaction, they're not going to survive.
and on this thing that I have pulled up, it says, how does fentanyl affect the brain? It says, as with other opioid drugs, fentanyl binds to the receptors in the brain that affect pain and emotions. This causes feelings of well being and relaxation, and it also relieves pain. Fentanyl affects everyone differently. The effects are dependent on the individual size, weight, and overall state of health. The effects are also dependent on the amount a person takes, whether they take it in combination with other drugs, whether the person is used to taking opioids. Over time, however, the brain adapts to fentanyl, making it hard for the person to experience positive emotions from anything but the drug. This can lead to addiction. So that right there is talking about how it
Yeah.
affects the brain.
It almost sounds similar like when crack first came out. You know, people used cocaine. It was a recreational drug. They'd use it on the weekends. They'd go to work during the week, and yeah, it was not the best thing for them. But the reactions and the addictions were not as strong. And then they came out with crack, and it was cheaper, easily available on the street, and it's like you used it once or twice, and you were addicted. And it ruined people's lives because then it multiplied the need of having to have it every day, and then every half a day, and then every few hours, and before you knew it, these people's had no lives left.
Yep. And I mean, it's really sad that people take something that's meant to be beneficial and turn it, to horrible crimes.
Yeah.
Like, on this article, it says the medical uses for fentanyl. Medically prescribed fentanyl is available in a variety of formulations, including lozenges, lollipops, oral or nasal sprays, and injections. Medical uses for fentanyl include anesthesia for patients undergoing heart surgery or for patients with poor heart function, management of breakthrough cancer pain in patients who are already receiving opioid medication for underlying persistent pain, pain management in people who have persistent, moderate to severe chronic pain requiring continuous around-the-clock opioids, and pain relief for people who are already taking narcotic or who are already opioid tolerant.
Yeah. So that's the thing. The tolerance builds up to these users, or whether it's prescription or non-prescription, and they get to that point. And that's what in the beginning I said the cartels started lacing more because the feedback they were getting from people was that the stuff on the street wasn't strong enough anymore. And part of that is once it gets to the U.S., it's being cut, it's being cut, it's being cut. So now here's the cheap alternative. Add a little bit of this to it, it spices it up, and now the money goes a lot further with what we're making selling it.
Yep. And then the side effects of fentanyl says older people are more likely than young individuals to experience adverse effects, especially the respiratory depressant effect of fentanyl. Healthcare professionals must exercise extreme caution and regularly monitor people in this age group. And the side effects of fentanyl include drowsiness, confusion, constipation, weakness, dry mouth, constricted pupils, unconsciousness, slowed respirations, decreased heart rate, nausea, sweating, flushing, stiff or rigid muscles, tight feeling in the throat, difficulty concentrating. Adverse effects associated with transdermal fentanyl patches include discoloration, rash, itching, swelling at the site of application. And any and all of those can actually lead into the abuse of fentanyl. So the people that just use it to get high, I really don't understand them because you have all these side effects. It's not a high, not the good feeling.
Yeah.
But yet it has to be like super addictive. It has to be, or they just wouldn't be going through all those side effects. Not that everybody's going to have every single side effect, but I mean, anybody that takes medicine, one or two side effects, and it makes you just not want to pick up that pill bottle.
Well, I think the users that started with stuff that was not cut with it, it gets to a point where their body needs something stronger. So to them, it's just like the person that becomes an alcoholic. They're no longer getting drunk when they drink. They're drinking to function so that way their brain doesn't fry from coming off of it. So they require something stronger because the normal stuff isn't cutting it. The problem is now the stuff being sold is already cut with it. So the person that's trying it for the first time or getting into it heavier, they're getting a stronger thing right up front. And then that makes them instantly addicted, I think.
Yeah, and I had shared a video on my community page. I advise anybody, if you have teens or young adults or anything, show them that video. It's called Dead on Arrival.
Hmm.
Um, this guy, I'm actually trying to get in contact with him to see if he'll come and talk later at a later time. But he put that little documentary together. This one kid, he just, basically he was just emotionally distraught, and he thought that the physical pain pill would take away the emotional problems that he was dealing with. And
Yeah,
it was one of the illicit phenols, and it killed him. His
yeah,
parents found him the next morning in his room, and he was just a young teen. So this
it's a
guy,
shame.
he had found out about that because it happened in the director or creator's hometown. So he went and started researching and started his little, I guess, company or whatever it is to bring
Yeah,
awareness to it. And there's a lot of stuff on that the YouTube page where I shared that video from.
yeah,
It's really worth the watch and to show kids. He's got it to where it won't like terrify kids. I mean, it'll stun them a little bit,
yeah.
but it's not gonna just like terrify them and stuff. It actually explains it.
I mean, even if it opens up one kid's eyes and it saves their life, it's worth it.
It really is. I mean,
Yeah,
that's why I do this. Like, I may not have like thousands of people chat and stuff, but I really don't want. I want it to where it's manageable and we can all talk, and
yeah,
people can come back and watch it later, because it's
yeah,
all about talking and bringing the awareness to it. You never know when somebody's going to have to hear something that's being said.
yeah.
And like around here in my town, you talk to the cops about stuff and they shut you down real quick.
It's a
Like they're
shame that they do that.
Yeah.
You'd expect more involvement from them.
Well, I mean, it's like I was telling you the other day. A lot of the people in here already know about CD helping my daughter. I
Yeah,
literally had to go to somebody on YouTube to get help
yeah.
for the cops in my town and two towns over to actually listen to me. And I
It's
had
a
been
shame.
doing it for like 4 or 5 months before I even talked to him, and I was getting nowhere. So that's how bad the cops are here. And that was for domestic violence. I mean, it wasn't like drug overdose and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's crazy. And then another thing, the cops don't even respond anymore. Um, Ever since they had to, stop doing their tickets and everything through the pandemic, I asked a cop the other day, one of the regulars that come into the store, what is the arrival time now after a 911 call? And he said that we're looking at anywhere from 35 to 47 minutes.
wow.
And that's in a
That's
small
crazy.
town.
Yeah, small town like that, you would expect a lot quicker. I mean, is the department been cut down in numbers quite a bit?
Yeah, we've lost a lot. Now, I noticed that we have like more highway patrol coming through, because we're not like on the freeway or anything. We're probably about an hour and a half maybe away from like the freeway,
Yeah,
45 minutes in another direction or so. But we've actually got an abundance of state patrol cars coming through here now, as to where we used to hardly ever see them.
gotcha.
So that part has increased, which is really good because they actually do more than what our local PD does anyway. But yeah, and we have a really big turnaround on our officers. Like, you see somebody here for a couple of weeks and then you just don't see them anymore, and then later it's a new person. And I don't know if they're just quitting because they don't like how things function around here, or if they're actually really good cops and they just get fired because they won't play along with, what all the crooked ones want to do. I really don't know. I
I,
have
I
not been.
I wonder. I wonder if it's a payroll issue. Maybe the starting pay there is at a certain level, and in order to get paid at a higher department, they need the experience. So they get on there so that they've got something for a resume, and then
Yeah,
once
but
they've completed stuff, they can go to a different department that pays more.
I don't know. But would 1 or 2 weeks give you that experience?
you
for a
could
pay
say you
rate.
work, you can say you've been on for a department. I mean, if the game plan is this department's easy to get on, and then I've got stuff to throw on my resume, I just wonder what the pay structure difference is between your department and like something maybe 30-40 miles away.
I don't know, but I know some departments up towards the city and stuff, they'll actually, like small town where they only have like 3 or 4 cops that, is there.
Yeah.
They actually give them houses and stuff, city paid rent, basically for them to work there. It's literally like the only way that they can keep officers in the smaller towns.
I mean, that's kind of a smart thing to do. I mean, if the city can't afford the funds, but they've got properties they own because of back taxes to turn that into a way to keep people on the force. I mean, that sounds like a benefit that would be worth doing. Because I'm
Yeah.
assuming now you're not paying taxes on that home that you're using because it's part of your job. So I mean, that could benefit them in the long run.
Yeah, it could. But I mean, that's only like the really small, like super
Yeah.
small towns that, I know a couple of them don't even have like a convenience store or anything in their exact town. They have to, drive 20 minutes just to get to a convenience store, but yet they have 3 or 4 houses that the city provides for officers to live in, which is great. I mean, I'm not knocking it if it keeps somebody employed and in a house, and as long as they're not like crooked cops and they're actually, doing what's right, and, go for it. But
It sort of sounds like the beginning stages when they started giving them take-home cars, because years ago that was never a thing, and then it progressed into where they would get a car to take home, and people always said, that that's abuse of power. They're using a police car to go to the store and stuff, but what it's doing is it's getting an off-duty officer driving a vehicle that gives more police presence in that town. And once it caught on and people justified it, it became the norm. But when that first started, it was almost unheard of.
yeah, I know when my dad was an officer, he had his car and stuff that he took home, and that was back, like in the 80s and early 90s and stuff. But it was because he was a deputy in one town, but he was a night watchman in another town. So basically, he was always on the job. So
Yeah.
he pretty much just kept his car. But yeah, it wasn't very heard of, even, with me growing up and stuff. And I'd hear his friends and stuff talk about how they'd have to drive to work and get the car, and they couldn't just respond without their car. And
Yeah.
if they heard it on the radio, they couldn't just, they couldn't go in their own personal vehicles. It was against the regulations and stuff. So they'd have to drive all the way across town, pick up their vehicle, and then go back. So yeah, that's been a long running issue.
Well, I think what's changed too is now jurisdictions have changed, because it used to be where you couldn't do something in a different town. And if you worked for a municipality, you had to live either in that town or like the bordering towns. And now they're allowing people to live further away, and they're allowing them to do things out of the town they work in. Like here in, Northwest Indiana, you could be at one department, you could be 2 towns over, and if you see something, you could respond to it. Whereas before that wasn't allowed.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
actually something good that they started doing then, because like here we have the city police, we have the sheriff's department, and then we have the state patrol that comes through,
Yeah.
and we have Light Horse, which is the tribal one. And if any of the other 3 officers stop somebody with a CDIB card, they literally have to call in the tribal unit to come there to give them their ticket or anything. Like, they don't even have the permissions to do anything. And it's like that with a lot of the areas. And we're the one town around here that has the tribal police. So our officers are having to travel 40, 50, 60 miles just to go and respond to somebody that needs a ticket issued. And that officer is just sitting on the side of the road waiting on them to get there.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a lot of different things that change as well.
That gets really complicated by you with the tribal. I know that holds a whole other layer into things.
Yeah, Sarah gets it. She says she's in a tribal town too.
Hmm.
Like I mean, it's good to have them. Like they do so much for this town. Like we've got the casinos and everything. It's amazing what they do, but there are laws and stuff on how some people are arrested and stuff. It's way out there. It's really, really weird. And we never hear anything about the tribal police making like drug busts and stuff. I mean, they do. Obviously, they do, but it's not something that's just like out there and announced and covered. Like the other police, whenever they make a $50 pot bust on somebody that doesn't have a medical card, you hear it for months. Like they're so proud of it. But the tribal police here, it's like full of respect, and they actually do what they're there for.
Yeah. I see that when you watch some of the videos where it shows stuff on tribal land, and it is handled differently, and you sort of wish that there could be a commingling between the two, but there's such a divide. It's got to be rough on the officers and knowing what to do before you make a stop.
Hey, Alexa.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, how are you? It's like I'm stalking you, right?
Yeah.
It's like
it's okay.
You can't get rid of me, right?
Yeah, you can stalk all you want.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I was just, I was driving back in New York City traffic, of course,
Oh, jeez.
So I'm like, all like out of breath. I'm like all sweaty. I'm trying to oh God. Let's see if I can.
What do you take? The George Washington?
No. I took the Midtown.
Okay.
I don't like the town. I don't like the
bridges. The GW. Yeah, the really? GW has always been a nightmare.
Yeah, my husband likes the Manhattan Bridge to come back from the city, but I'm like, no, I like the Midtown. It's so for me so much easier. It's just boom straight. So hello everybody. So so and I didn't realize that Sunny has look at me. Like Sunny had asked me to be on the live with you guys tonight. I totally forgot, and I'm like, oh boy. I'm like, okay, so I have to make both.
Yeah, and I had already told him I want to go to Sunny's live too, so I'm not gonna I'm not gonna make this overlap. But there's a couple in here that was interested about your saving somebody's life story.
Yeah, I mean, well, first I have to start with my story. So I had suffered from brain cancer a couple years ago. So in that, first it goes back. I was in a car accident when I was 23, and I broke my L5 on my back, and I broke my hand. So I started suffering from pain, but I didn't take any pain medication. And then I had brain cancer. I went through when I had my twins. So that was like about 7 years ago. I went through that. So I started having a lot of pain, a lot of neuropathy pain. So I started taking, it's a very taboo thing because I didn't want to take pain medication. And that was the one thing I was like, I don't want to take it because of the taboo that everybody's like, oh, you're going to get addicted and then you're going to change and you're going to start drooling and all the negative thing that comes with that. But thank God I had such a wonderful team of, my doctors have been so good. And so far I've been on it, practically like 6 years already. And thank God so far so good. We have kept it because when you start taking narcotics, your body starts craving more and more. Your body gets used to it.
Yeah.
But thank God, we found a dose. And I also have a condition that any medication that I take, my stomach doesn't absorb it. So I have what it's called opiate malabsorption. It's what's called. So basically, let's say I take a pill of oxycodone of 30 milligrams. My body doesn't take the 30 milligrams. My body only ingests 15 of those milligrams. So I have to be monitored a little bit closer to everybody else so I can get pain relief without, ODing or anything. So that's how I come, to know narcotics very closely. And I always believed, and actually always in my bag, I always carry this. And last time there was a couple weeks ago. Well, I had two times. One was in Florida, but the recent one was a couple weeks ago that I was driving and I noticed that there was somebody driving also next to me, but I noticed that they kind of started feeling, it's almost like they were collapsing, but they weren't. And I was like, maybe and it's one of those things that by the time my brain kind of realized what was happening, I was already there. So I opened the door, and obviously the Good Samaritan law, you have to be careful because you don't want to be sued. And, so and he was with somebody else, and they had said that, he had ingested a what he thought it was an oxycodone pill, but obviously it was laced with fentanyl. So he's, at this time he's blue. I have a CPR thing in my car also. I always carry, but I did this. I opened my Narcan. This is another one that I have. And I opened the Narcan and I gave it to him, and he wouldn't come back. And so I'm like, I went to the car. Luckily I had two, and I administered two. Obviously we called 911. And by the time that everything, by the time 911 got there, he started to breathe again. So I always tell people that the importance, because it's this fentanyl, whether they taking it consciously, unconsciously, or people don't know, they're laced, whatever, people are using drugs. And that's something that as parents, as community, as teachers, we have to be aware that people are using it and abusing it. So I think the best thing to know is to get one of these devices, because you never know who you might save. And and sometimes they can give it to you for free. I know that if you go sometimes to the police stations here, at least here in New York, I don't know in other states, but I know here in New York, if you go into the police stations and sometimes the fire stations, and you tell them that you would like to have one either for personal use or for whatever, they'll give it to you. And that's the story. So I was very lucky that I was able to save somebody's life just because I had this in my purse. So I always keep it. I keep one in my purse, and I always keep another one in my car, because you never know.
Well, was he experiencing what they call that heroin stare, where it's like he's sort of in it but out of it? Was that what you
No,
noticed?
he was already out. No, he was. I mean, it was interesting because by the time, it was at a stop sign. No, it was at a red light. And by the time I look, I just remember, like, he was driving. His friend was able to jump, but he was driving. He was just like, he went like this. But at the beginning, I saw him like this, and I'm thinking maybe he's falling asleep. But then I'm like, that wouldn't make sense because his friend is with him. But by the time my brain computed everything.
Yeah.
He was just like this on the steering wheel. And that's when I just jumped out of my car. Like, I don't even know. Don't ask me how I parked my car. I don't remember. It was seconds. Thank God, no cars were coming around. I mean, I pulled over and everything. But, by the time I realized, I was like, oh my God, I was opening his door. And I was also lucky that, that his friend was there and they were able to tell us what he had taken. Because obviously the kid knew that, that he tried. So, and it's an epidemic. I was talking to a friend of mine that he works in the DEA, and it's very controversial because a lot of them, and I can tell you this from inside information, a lot of them know what's going on, and they can't stop it. They simply cannot stop it for many reasons. Money, the connections that the cartels have. Also, they get a cut. A lot of the border patrols, like I was telling you, that I know from this friend of mine that works for the DEA, that there's connections. And for example, when there's like a big truck coming with drugs, they use a decoy. Well, they make noise here so the car can go here. And I also know, I know many people that have become mules, through my, my career. I wasn't in law enforcement or anything, but I work with law enforcement very closely. And I have met many people that have done the muling from Guatemala all the way to Spain. Spain is filled with with drugs. They used to call it, now they call it the bridge. Like, they call it the bridge to Europe, because that's how bad it is. So it's something that we cannot look it over. We cannot ignore it. All the politicians, they try to ignore it. They say it's getting better. No, it's not. Now the fentanyl is becoming an epidemic. There's every 5 minutes. So think about it. How long have we been here? Every 5 minutes, somebody ODs on fentanyl only. So that means there's 275 deaths per day on fentanyl, just fentanyl alone.
And
they can't have people believe it's getting better, because it's not.
No, it's
not.
It's
growing exponentially. Every day it's worse than it is the day before.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the research that I have done, and when I talk about research, I'm talking like 14, 16 hours most days of research, even when I'm working. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm always researching something. And most of the fentanyl problem, they want to say it's all in the US. Like, it's very hard to find information from other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, everybody knows I try to include different demographics, different, locations, this and that, and different cultures or whatever that's affected by pretty much whatever I talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I'm seeing is based in the US. Like, it's really hard to expand the knowledge out to other countries.
And you know also who has a lot of dirty hands, and they try to make it a Mexico problem. But it's not only Mexico, it's China.
Yep.
China
Yeah.
is introducing a lot of the fentanyl that we have on the streets. It's coming from
Right.
China, but they're making it sound that it's only the cartels from Mexico,
Yeah,
from,
it's just like building the wall. Okay, if that's what you want to do, then build the wall. Like, I'm not anti-wall.
Mhm,
I have friends I know they're going to go under or over either way, but it's not just that area. The
mhm,
drug bust that we had across from my store, it was with the Chinese people. And, some of the shops and stuff that we have around here, like the nails and, like, they're awesome people. But then you get this one group and
mhm.
people don't want to look at it because it's not the Mexicans.
Yeah.
It's
I
just,
mean,
it's,
if you look at how much is coming into the United States, you know it's not coming over the border. The border is a small percentage of it. There's so many other ways it's coming into the U.S.
Mhm.
Between shell companies and different things on the coastlines, airplane. There's so many other ways to get it here. The border is a small percentage of what we worry about.
Mhm.
exactly. And you can get so much more in a boat than you can get in a truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also my friend was telling me also the things that they're using drones. Because there's some drones that some kind of technology, don't ask me because I don't know a lot about
Yeah.
technology, but some kind of technology that they cannot really be spotted, and they don't need a license to, but they can fly like more like in higher than anything. I don't know how it is, but they put in a lot of it, and it fits because the pills are tiny. So they do it by drones, or they do it by submarines
Yeah.
that they put it
Submarines.
in.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Submarines definitely. Those remote controlled semi subs are probably one of
mhm,
the highest ways of getting the stuff over here, other than
mhm.
shipping it through shell companies.
Hmm. So this has become what the '80s was for Pablo Escobar, and
Yeah.
when he had his cocaine roots and everything. This is exactly what fentanyl has become. And I hate when people are like, with teachers and everything, and they're like, oh, but I don't. That's not my problem. No, I think it's a problem that all the schools, everybody should be aware of it. My kids, because obviously, because I take medication. I always, since they were little, I always told them the truth. I always said, hey, I explain everything, obviously, to their knowledge,
Yeah.
and I
Totally right.
always told them, listen, if you see this, you never touch it. And,
Right.
and obviously, I always have it in it. I have a safe, so ever have everything in a safe. But I always, for example, keep my main pills. I always keep them like this. And I know it's gonna get to a point that, and we're talking to my husband, that I can't have them available anymore because I get the friends, or they're gonna be maybe be like, oh, your mom takes that, maybe get one. You know what I mean? The pressure. So I
Yeah.
know that this is coming to an end very soon. But always having control and also talking about it. And I always told them, if you ever, thank God and thank the Lord, I have never found anything on the floor that I have dropped or anything. But I always tell them, even if you find anything, just call me. And we have found my husband's whatever Advils or whatever, never mind. And same thing, they have always said, you know what, I found something, can you come and get it? Because they're afraid of touching it. I always said, please don't touch it, because you
Yeah.
can get, especially with fentanyl patches.
Yeah,
They're
just getting on their fingers and then licking their fingers or something.
and yeah, and that's it. So, and that's another thing that I was horrified, because the kids were using the patches, and they were getting hot tea, and they were putting the patches in the tea in a hot water to make tea,
Yeah. Yeah.
to drink it.
Yep.
And I was just like, how do they come up with that? To get the drug, to get, to get the release, to break the seal to make it faster. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
wow, it's amazing what people come up with. So it's, I thank you, never mind, never silent, that you're doing this talks, that everybody is here, Louis too, that you guys are talking about it and you're making it, aware. And hopefully one day somebody can bump into your video and can hear us and can, see that, this is, you have to be careful. And for those kids that they say, oh, I'm going to take a pill and, I want to escape, you never know. Unless you test the pills, you don't know what you're getting, unless you're getting it from the pharmacy.
Yeah, see,
Exactly.
that's the biggest thing that I think most people don't realize is the stuff that they're getting from a friend or buying on the street from somebody they don't know is not like it was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They could be buying something that's completely different or extremely stronger or laced with who knows what. I mean, you don't know what the end user is getting because the end seller could be cutting it with who knows what on top of the fentanyl just to make more money.
Yeah.
And we're
Exactly.
at a time now. Money is what people are trying to accomplish, and they don't care about the safety of the people that are buying anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Sarah says that 3 nurses in her mom's nursing home were making tea with used patient patches.
Wow.
And they got fired. See, that's the same thing I was saying earlier. The lady that was taking the used patches and making her diet tea or whatever,
Yeah, you mentioned that.
she was taking them out of a couple of different nursing homes. She worked as a CNA in one, and then she was in the laundry section, or the maybe it was the food department. I don't know. She was in something in another one, and that's where she was getting the used patches and stuff from. And then nothing happened to her, nothing at all. She didn't get
That just
fired. She
proves
didn't
how.
get arrested.
Yeah, that just proves how strong the addiction is. If
Yeah.
you're going to the extent of taking patches and making tea out of it just to get the drug in your system, then that means you definitely have an addiction problem.
Yeah, you do.
Exactly. Damn,
do.
Danny, that is so sad.
You do. And that's the thing, that, you have to be careful. And there's two differences, because, I was always afraid of that. I was always afraid of the getting addicted. And then, through psychology and everybody and checking everything, and they were explaining to me that there's a difference between being addicted and to being physically dependent, which is what I am. That
Yeah.
I needed physically, to take my medication in order for me to function as a human being, to take care of my kids, to do everything that I need to do, so I don't have a lot of pain.
See,
I still have
how
pain, but
I've
it's
been
different. But it's different from the addiction. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I've been on opioids since 2009 with the MS diagnosis, chronic pain, and a whole bunch of stuff. But I've had times where the doctors went on vacation and he was gone for like 2 weeks after my appointment. I've not once had any kind of withdrawals or anything like that from
That's
it.
good.
And I've also never had a drug test come back bad. Like, it's always been in my system. It's never had, extras, something like that. And then people's like, well, I don't see how you can be on it for so long and not be addicted to it. Apparently I have a really high tolerance for addiction. I don't drink. I don't, stuff like that. So, taking the medicine and stuff as prescribed is one thing, but when you take somebody's medicine and turn it into tea,
yeah, of course,
we got issues.
That's the issues. And did you ever experience this? I experienced it at the beginning, and that's why I was so afraid. My family was against it. My family comes very old school, very like, why are you going to take narcotics? They're bad for you. And that's why I never wanted to take them. And then even the pharmacist, because I was taking obviously a higher dose than everybody. And then, obviously I could have explained why. And they could have called my doctor, and my doctor could have been like, hey, she has a malfunction and she doesn't take it. That I was getting like from the pharmacy, like I was getting a little bit like I started feeling like the first few days, like first few times. And then it was almost like they kind of like started like red flagging me. And I was like, but I never gave any reason why. Like I was always, I think I'm coherent. I don't think I'm opening my mouth and drooling. I mean, when I drive, I usually don't take, when I know I'm going to drive, I don't take it. But But to me, I mean, it doesn't really affect me anymore. I mean, it just takes the pain away. It takes that little edge of the pain away. I think
That's
you
how
probably
mine
understand.
is.
Yeah, you
It
probably
it
get
literally
what
just
I'm
takes
saying.
the pain away. But
Mm-hmm.
normally, like when I work and stuff, I'll take like half of my pill before I go to work,
Mm-hmm.
and then if I'm there longer than my shift, which kind of my boss keeps me there longer usually now,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'll come home on a break and take the other half or something. But yeah, even when I'm just out like birthday parties and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, like I don't even worry about them. Like,
Yeah. No.
I've heard a lot of people saying that they've had pills for like 2 or 3 weeks and then that's all they can think about and stuff. It's never been that way with me,
No.
which I mean, I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I'm really glad,
I
but
think so. I think it's because you have taken it. I think that you've been like me. I have taken it just how it is prescribed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even when the doctor's like, "Oh, I think we should move it up because I don't think you're getting the relief," and he put me on fentanyl patches at one point, and I was like, "No way!" And I tried them, I think, for 2 days, and I called him and I said, "I am not doing this." I'm like, "No way! I want to come back to what I was. My pills, I will make them work."
yeah,
And
that's me. I mean, I still have some days that okay, from 2009 up until like mid last year sometime, like
mhm,
maybe about 8 months ago or so, I was on the same dose, 3 a day.
mhm, mhm,
And
mhm.
then from 2009 up until about maybe 8 months ago or so, he finally upped it to 4 a day. But that was because with my work schedule and stuff, I was like going crazy. I was there from morning to close and
Mhm.
lifting heavy stuff,
Mm,
unloading the orders and stuff like
yeah.
that. So me upping it or him upping it for me was based on more pain being, longer periods
Yeah.
of pain through the day.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
But I still don't even like I don't have the bottle in my car. I don't take them to work with me. If I'm stuck
Mm-mm.
there, then I'm just kind of stuck there,
No, me
but
neither.
people, like I've heard them 2 or 3 weeks into taking the pills and they just rush home to get it or they keep it in their glove box and you know I'm
Mhm.
thinking you've got issues like you really need to self check because something's not right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people take it to cope with things. And it's like any addiction, like food, alcohol, drugs, anything. And I think a lot of people take it to escape. And that's what a lot of the parents are not understanding, that when those kids go and buy that pill is because something is going on in their lives that they feel that they need that escape. And that's what we have to target. And as parents, we have to be so vigilant about what our kids are doing, who are friends with our kids, also.
I'm so
And
lucky my kids are homeschooled and they really only go to their older siblings. They really don't have the whole friend thing. They don't want them.
that's
Like they can make
that's
friends easily, but they don't
that
want them.
that
They
is that
don't want
is
all that
good.
drama. But I was seeing here where Sarah said she keeps thinking of someone drinking someone's sweat and skin cells.
Yeah, it's
You see,
disgusting. Think about it.
that's funny though, because I mean
Yeah,
not funny that it's happening, but because the one girl was saying it was a diet tea. So yeah, obviously if you knew what was in it, you wouldn't want to drink it. It'd be a diet.
exactly. That's
Mhm.
why I say the addiction has to be that strong because you're overcoming the factor of doing that with a patch that's been on somebody's body. And
Yeah.
I mean, talk about unsanitary. I mean, you're boiling, but still, that's like a biohazard at that point.
Mhm.
Exactly. And I mean, every patch is also designed to where it pulls stuff out of the body as well. Like it
Yeah.
puts in the medicine, but it also detoxes.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes,
so there is literally no telling what is in those patches
correct.
once they do that. Like there could be so many different diseases and stuff
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
the
That's
body has
disgusting.
detoxed.
Well, you also you don't know what other medication they're on, and that stuff gets released through their pores when they sweat. So I
Mhm.
mean, that's not just that patch; it's now a
Mhm.
cocktail of other
Mhm.
medication.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And that was the one thing I didn't want to take it either, because there were so many restrictions I had. I remember, because you can't put it on you cannot put it on a bony part of your body. Has to
Yeah.
be like a meat, what they call the meaty part. So whatever. So I decided to put like here and the upper arm. But then you cannot put, for example, when I sleep, I couldn't sleep that way because the weight of my body on that would accelerate the speed of the medicine taking it, of the release of the patch. Then if you shower with with water that was too hot, it would accelerate the rate of absorption.
Yeah.
I couldn't hug my kids. So that's why I remember I took it. I think I don't remember if it was 1 or 2 days. And I said to the doctor, never again. I was like, please never again. Take me off this crap. I'm like, I don't want it. I don't, I don't feel comfortable touching my kids. I don't feel comfortable my kids touching me, and even, after I put, I had to put gloves. It was no, I was like so complicated. I was like, no, thank you. I mean, and it honestly, and it didn't even help me. Everybody was like, oh, you're going to feel so much better from coming from the oxycodone to that. And honestly, for me, it didn't really help me as much. I think, where I am, it's my okay place to be. So never again.
I totally
That,
feel that. Like he's tried to change me over to like, well, I was also taking the ibuprofen 800s for the inflammation and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't do anything. It don't even take a headache away from me.
Mm-mm.
So he added the tramadol release tabs and stuff one a day, and like they don't even really do that much for me other than make me sleep for a couple of hours after I take it. But then I'm still feeling the same amount of pain and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, I'm on what I'm on and it's working, and
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to mess with it.
And that's the thing is we, when I was working, I had to be alert. I couldn't, obviously they were so nice and they knew about it and they understood. My agency was always so nice and they always understood. But I mean, you have to be alert too. You couldn't fall asleep, because I had to work. So it was also a matter of, with the other medications, you fall, you get drowsy, and I didn't want to be drowsy.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same for me. I go to work, I come home, I do the school, the kids, the homeschool, whatever I got to do. I
Mhm.
literally sleep from like maybe 5 a.m. to about 10:30 a.m. if I'm lucky, and then my day starts again.
Oh,
So I can't be drowsy all day long.
yeah, no, we can't afford it. Yeah, yeah, I got you. I am the same way. But it's so important to talk, about. I was watching this show. I think I might send it to you because I think it's online too, and I'll send it to Louis too. And they were talking about how in Mexico, and especially in Tijuana, you cross the border. I haven't been there in years, but I am assuming it's the same. Before it was like all the knockoffs, so now it's all
Yeah.
the medication. So now it's the same, the knockoffs, the medications. So for example, they would have the real. I use Malencraft, the oxycodone with the M, and then they would have the fake one. And if you compare them, I mean, somebody that maybe knows, like I obviously can tell the difference because I use it every day. But somebody that kids, they won't know. Like the logo, it's a little, the other one is a little more rounder than, you can pick it.
yeah.
But they're selling counterfeited drugs, and even the lady was, and they were calling it super drugs. So you want the regular one or the super drug? The super drug means that it was the real, like almost the real, like no, it was the real one. It was a copy of the real one. And then the knockoffs
Yeah.
that were laced with, let's say something with fentanyl just to make you feel high, that high. So it's, and a lot of Americans, a lot of people are crossing the borders to buy, the pills.
Everything's cheaper down there. I
Yeah.
mean, not even just the medicines, but doctors and the surgeries, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's so much cheaper just to go elsewhere, even if it does risk your life doing so. But the number I've got scrolling across now, it's up there. If anybody has any kind of questions about any medicine whatsoever that they're taking, side effects or proper dosage or anything, they will. When I called them the other day just to verify that it, was working and everything,
Mm-hmm.
I asked them about my medicine, and they went really in depth with it. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mention anything about doing it for research. I just called as a, patient or whatever. So
Mhm.
the number that's up there now, it's really good about finding medicines. Like if kids are taking medicines and it's a new medicine or something, call it.
Mhm.
They will go in depth over everything related to that medicine.
Mhm. And I also would like to see that in, for example, like on their on the actual boxes. I
Yeah.
don't want to show my name and my address, but on the actual boxes, I wish they would put, like the number where you can call in case somebody gets addicted or somebody gets ingested and they're not supposed to, but they don't even put. I was looking at it and I'm like, they
Yeah,
don't
they
even
used to. It used to be on literally everything, and now I've noticed that they haven't.
No,
They
now
haven't.
this one is no. I mean, this is from it's already. I should throw it away because it's expired. But it's no, it doesn't even have. It doesn't even have a number where to call, like in case somebody takes it or anything. Imagine that is like so bad that they should
Yeah, but
put.
you can go to Walmart and buy a bottle of like Tylenol, and there's a number on there of
Yeah,
where you to call for an overdose or whatever. But the high powered medicines that only a doctor can prescribe, they just apparently don't care.
very
It's funny how that works because even with gambling, anything that you do, whether it's online or at a casino, has to have that Gambler's Anonymous number with it. But when it
mm-hmm.
comes to prescription medication, it's like it doesn't matter. I went through that same thing because I've got to be gluten free,
Mm-hmm.
and the FDA does not require medication to be labeled gluten free or not. It
Jesus.
is ridiculous. Food does, but medication does not. And there's medication that people with celiacs would have to do, like when you've got to have a upper and lower done. They give you the different stuff to drink the day before, the cleanser and all that. And one of the two different flavorings you can pick is not gluten free. And the pharmacist doesn't know that. So if you don't research things, you don't know. Same thing with the medication. It doesn't have to be labeled with any kind of number to contact for help. And I think that's crazy. With such a strong narcotic like that, why is there not a phone number on the box?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was gonna say Sarah says that you can call pharmacists and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but they're not always open.
That's exactly what I said to Sarah. I said exactly, but for example, my pharmacy closes at 6, so that means that if anything happens after 6, I would have to call 911. So, and then a lot of people are scared because then you call 911 and then you open that can of worms. So a lot of people
Yeah.
won't do that.
Yeah,
So,
there is supposed to be some laws in place that if you call about an overdose and stuff, then the person that overdosed or the people that's present at the time of the overdose, they can't be brung up on criminal charges, but they
mhm.
always find a loophole and
Oh yeah.
they usually end up getting somebody on something.
Hmm. Hmm.
But even if there's no loophole, you've got a group of teenagers using drugs. They don't know that they're safe to call. They're thinking worst case scenario. They show up. We've got drugs here. There's a problem.
Hmm.
That's
And
why
the,
you've got so many of those dumps at ERs, and you're lucky if they go that
mhm.
far to do that. Otherwise,
Mhm.
they'll leave them where they are and just run.
Yes, many have done that.
And
Even
on
adults have done
Yeah,
that.
and on a few of them that do call in, they don't just call in immediately. They go and flush their stash and everything, or
Hmm.
send somebody off with it to take it to another location before they even think about calling 911. And
Exactly. Yeah. Clean the scene before you call, and that 5, 10, 15, 20 minute period can mean somebody's life or death.
yeah, that's a great idea, Sarah. But
Yeah.
how many teens are gonna have it? Like,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
it should come
In the
with,
box, on the
well, it should
box.
either come on the box or it should be one of the like governmental things where they require it to be already programmed into the phones.
Hmm. Or it should be like a 411 number that is just for that. Because I mean,
Yeah.
don't tell me that it's such a big problem that it can have its own dedicated phone number and people instead of going to the police, because police shouldn't come for those things. So they
Yeah.
should really have a specific number just for that.
I will do some
Yeah.
research into that and I will see what I can do because I
Yeah,
mean
maybe we can
I've
do
done
like maybe we can write the idea and lobby it to
yeah, I was gonna say
Congress for
take
people.
it from protest to policy. I mean I've
Hmm.
done a lot of classes
That
and
would
stuff
be a
for
good
that
idea.
too. Um taking things into policy, which I'm going to be working with somebody now that the new year has started, over ovarian cancer testing, because that's something that's just not tested for on yearly visits and stuff like that. And the one that I'm going to be working with, she was pretty far advanced with it, and they kept telling her it was just this or other things. And so she got with me, and so that's one thing that I'm going to be working with her, is trying to get the ovarian testing part of the yearly testing, like through insurance companies and everything. Like we're going to be taking that into maybe a policy of some sort. So adding a 3-digit phone number for like a poison control center or something like that.
That would be great.
Yeah, that's totally doable. Gotta research some of it.
Yeah, we could really look into that.
Yeah, it'd take a couple of different people looking into it, though, if we're going to do it like national or, worldwide or whatever, because a lot of times we can only find stuff for our own area.
What state are you in?
I'm in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Okay. I'm in New York, and Louis is in Indiana. Yeah, but I'm sure we can find something.
I mean, a 3-digit number would be a lot better than an 800 number that you have to try to find, especially for something that's immediate life or death,
and especially on a lot of people, and I see it, with my family. I can handle emergencies very well, I guess, because I was trained. So I stay calm, cool. I can think. My family, like I see it on my husband and my kids, they go crazy. They're like chickens without a head, like and they don't even know where to go. And I'm like, and that's how people react to most emergencies. So you're not gonna remember 8 number, like an 8-digit number, a 10-digit number. You need something quick, fast, boom.
And you know what? They've flooded 911 calls now with everything. Like the other day, there was an issue here, and I called the local police department number because it was not an emergency. Somebody had actually left their trunk open, and as I was getting ready to leave here, I saw it. I wanted to make sure nobody stole stuff out of the car. And the response was, you need to call 911 for that. We can't dispatch an officer unless you call 911. So you're forcing me to call 911 for non-emergency call to tie up a dispatcher who could be saving somebody's life when you're actually at the police department. It made no sense at all.
It's stupid. But then when you call, like when I was in my car accident a couple months ago, I called 911 and I said, and they're like, are you in pain? And I'm like, well, a little, but it's not, I'm not bleeding. I'm not broken. And they're like, no, so then we cannot send an officer unless you need to go in an ambulance. And I'm like, seriously? So I don't have a police report because of that.
If there's not a certain amount of damage, they don't want to send an officer out for a for a car accident. They won't even do a report if they show up if the damage is under a certain amount. It's like, how are you as a cop licensed to tell me how much damage there is?
My car. Yeah, I know. My car looks like it has like a $500 damage, but it's everything inside, like all the back. I think it's up to $6,000 now because all the cameras, everything.
You require the police report in order to get the other person's identification and insurance information. So if they don't want to give info or if they don't have it to give, you're sort of stuck unless they do a police report.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like here, that cop was saying anywhere from 35 to 47 minutes of wait time whenever somebody does call 911. And I asked him, I said, well, what's the time frame for somebody that just calls the police department? And he just looked at me and shook his head. Basically, he was telling me we don't even respond.
It's Sarah is saying a good idea to always have. I always have it, like I always have my little agenda. I'm old school. I like to have everything in my little calendar, and in the back I have all my information, like my husband's information, like my medical, everything. So everything, and this is always in my purse. I usually always have my purse, so I always have my purse. I always have it here, so in case of an accident or whatever, it's always there. But that's a good idea, Sarah, too. Whatever, what you're saying is also have a list that lists all your conditions, all the numbers, everything, just in case. It's a little bit easier.
That's a great tip.
Yes, Sarah, that's a great tip. So.
Yeah, but I will start looking into that to get a 3-digit number for
Hmm.
easier
Yeah, I think that would
access.
be a great. I always had that idea, but I never really looked into it until I was like, okay, until I'm like, we really should look into that and see.
Now, you guys have different scenarios than I did with my experience with opioids because you guys have a chronic long-term condition.
Hmm.
But about 15 years ago, I had to have my tonsils out, which as an adult is a very painful operation. So they put me on oxycodone, I think it was. And it was the worst feeling drug. I don't like taking pain medicine as it is, but taking that made me feel horrible, but it got rid of the pain. And then if I didn't take it, the pain would come back and then it would take a day to get rid of it. It was about a 6-week process. And what I noticed was because I wound up getting myself off of it within a short amount of time. Hold on one second here, please.
Oh my God, I didn't realize it was 9:40 already.
Oh, has Sunny already started?
Sorry
I
about
don't
that.
know.
But what I noticed from it is, being that it's not something I had to stay on, I've had a rough life with my body. I've done a lot of things. I used to, water ski a lot, snow ski a lot. I've had a lot of injuries over time. Is things that no longer hurt me over years and years of just dealing with pain, coming off of that drug,
Mm-hmm.
everything hurts.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see people that can't handle pain well, getting on the medication for an injury, coming off of the injury, and not being able to come off the medication because the pain they feel when they stop taking it is well above and beyond what they experienced from the injury they were treating. And I could see on a person having to deal with that going through hell.
Exactly. I mean, it's like I've said, with me since 2009, I've had my pills and I've never had a bad drug test. I've never had any of the withdrawals.
Yeah.
But my doctor has yearly went on vacation and anywhere from 2 weeks to a month. And it's always, at one point in the year, pushed my doctor's visit up a couple of weeks. So during that couple of weeks, like, yeah, pain is bad. Like, even just a headache is so much worse than normally what a headache should be.
But do you stay away like those weeks? Do you stay without medication? Because that's even dangerous too for somebody that takes it all the time. You can even get a heart attack from that.
Yeah, that's the problem that, because when he goes off, he'll say I'll be gone for a week and he'll try to like schedule everybody's visits, but then he'll be down in like Cancun or something and he won't come back for, 2 weeks or a month or whatever.
Because I mean, that's when, for example, like my doctor, when he does that, he goes a month to Europe so what he does is, for example, so he would send the prescriptions, like 2 prescriptions to the pharmacy, and he would give me, one from here to there, and then the other one, because, they also, I don't know over there. I think here in New York, they expire after 30 days.
Yeah, we have to go every 28 days.
Yeah, the same thing with me. But you can call the insurance and they can do an overwrite, like for like a vacation overwrite, to fill it sooner, once a year. And they can explain this because of the doctor's going away, blah, 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 because that's what I do. I do it sooner. That way it's there at the farm. I don't have it physically, but the pharmacy has it and it doesn't expire, because if it expires, it's the same thing. Or the doctor should leave somebody to write you the prescription, because I mean that's dangerous. You shouldn't be, because that you're forcing your heart and everything and your brain, because your brain is already wired for that. And you can, thank God haven't gone to withdrawals, but you can still get a heart attack from that. So that's something to be very careful with.
Yep. And so like all the patients that go there, like I've just heard them randomly talking and stuff there in the lobby. And, we all know that whenever he's going to start going out of town, instead of taking 4 a day, take 3 a day, or, just random, just to, kind of get us through it. But this doctor, he's also had a lot of legal issues and stuff too. So I don't really expect him to be around much longer, but yeah. you know, they give people meds, and then people misuse meds, and then the doctors are doing their own things to make, you know, meds.
Yeah, no, that's wrong. See, that's wrong. That's yeah. You should be careful also with that too, because you know they drug you. No, that's horrible. I hate when they do that. You know, so many have been caught up. I guess because they pay. You know, a lot of people are paying cash. No, my doctor only gives very few scripts, and you know, and you have to have it like in black and white. Like you know, somebody like me, it's black and white.
Yeah.
Why in that? And he always tells me that, you know, and always, you know, they like he has lawyers that every year they give me that. I know I get that call, and I have to go to the gastro and prove again that I have an enzyme, that my body doesn't break down the opiates, and I have the opiate malabsorption, and you know,
Yeah.
so he can be protected too.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's
just a
crazy.
big mess when it comes to all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I seen where Sunny
Yeah.
is live now, so
Okay, so it
I'm
was a
gonna.
pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. It
Yeah.
was, you know, I really enjoyed it. Thank you,
It was good
everybody.
talking to you guys.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now I do normally like do like a midweek one where I kind of discuss every topic that I've ever covered. So if y'all want to, you know, talk more, then it'll be open panel like midweek sometime, depending on my
Okay,
work schedule. But
yeah, just let
thank
us
you
know.
both. Thank
Sure.
you both for coming here and talking.
Okay.
It's a
It was good
very
talking with you again.
topic.
Yeah, great talking to you guys too. And have a good night, Sarah. Good night. Nice talking to you. Nice meeting you. And everybody have a good night.
Yes,
Yeah.
everyone in chat, good night. It was good talking with you guys too, and maybe
I will
we can
see
do
you
this
over
again
there.
next week if you want.
Yes.
Yep, totally. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
go ahead and close out. I
Have a
will
good
talk
night.
to everybody later.
Okay.
Much
Bye
You
bye.
love.
guys have a great weekend.